Hey, what's up everyone? This is Phil Ebner back with a new lesson in the Create Your Own Video Intro course. I'm really excited because today we're actually going to dive into After Effects and start learning that program, start learning the basics of using After Effects and the basics of motion graphics so that you can create your own great video intro. And the way that this is going to work is I'm going to basically recreate some of the bumpers that I've created in the past in this section and go step by step and tell you how to do it. So I want to show you the bumper. The first one we're doing is one you just saw, the Video School Online bumper. And let's just take a look at that and see how it looks again, just to refresh our brains. Alright, so we have the audio beats, and that basically is the track that moves this bumper along. With each beat, a new motion happens. You have half of the V pop up, the other half it inverts, it shrinks, and then it basically, Video School Online comes out of the V. Alright, so let's get straight into After Effects. Okay, so I opened up After Effects Creative Cloud, and the first thing I'm going to do is actually import this bumper because I couldn't find the audio. It must be on another hard drive, and I'm just going to steal this audio. And I can actually use this in my timeline as a great reference tool. When you're creating something, I can refer back to it, and you'll see that. But first I'm going to create a new composition down here with this icon. Make sure your settings are correct, whatever you want it to be. I like HDTV 1080 2997. This is pretty good for all of my standard videos. So I'll call this Video School Online bumper redo. 10 seconds down here, that's good. Background color black, perfect. Alright, so now we have our composition up here. I'm going to make this fit up to 100%. I'm going to drag this bumper onto our timeline. So now we have our bumper on our timeline. If we want to play this through, you'll notice that in After Effects, if you just press the space bar, it plays, but it doesn't play audio. So you'll have to do one of two things. If you have a keyboard with the number pad on the right side, so like basically all the numbers on the right side and the big 0 on the bottom, you can press the 0 and it will render out your effects area. So this work area, you see that I'm dragging in and out, it will render out this area. So if I press 0, you notice that it rendered it out. That makes this bar green above it, and that means it's rendered, and then it will play with music. And then if you just keep if you just press 0, it'll keep looping and playing over and over. You can also press Control 0 if you don't have a keyboard with the number pad on the right side. If you're just using a laptop or something, Control 0 will render it out like I did before. So you'll see it render and then play with the audio. And so that's a good thing to know how to do, and the first thing I wanted to teach you because so many people come to me and ask me how to play After Effects videos with the audio. Alright, so let's dive into this. First I have to create this white background. I'm going to double click this rectangle tool, and it creates a shape the same size as my composition. This fill color up here on the top, I'm going to change to white so that it is the same as my original bumper. I can look back to my original bumper by either clicking off this eyeball here, so it makes this layer invisible, or soloing this bottom layer here. And that is what we'll be doing in the future when we have a lot of different layers. We won't have to keep clicking this eyeball over and over and over. We can just click this solo button and see our bottom layer. So there, I was pretty sure that my original bumper had a pure white background and not an off-white, but now I know for sure. Okay, then I'm going to add my V in the center. So I'm going to type V, but as you can see, it looks like it's invisible, but that's because it's white. So I'm going to change this to a black for now. But you'll notice that this V in the original bumper is not perfect black. It's kind of an off black gray, and we'll change that color in a second. Okay, so then I'm going to increase the size of this V. And first thing I'm going to do is basically change the anchor point. So select this pan behind tool, or press Y on your keyboard. Select this little circle with the lines coming out of it and move it about to the center of your V. And then when you increase the size, let's see, I'm going to have to do that again after I make it the right size. But then if I increase the scale or change the position or rotation of this down in our timeline, so if I press S, it brings up scale, it will increase from the anchor point. But see, if I move it down here where it was and I change the scale, it increases from the bottom. So I want to make sure that the anchor point is in the center of this. So first let me get it to about the right size, something like that. I'm going to move the anchor point to the center. Alright, and then I want to make sure that this whole letter is centered on our screen. Let me make this 100% actually first. Decrease the size a little bit. I like keeping my things at 100%, just, I don't know if it's an OCD thing or what, but before I start actually editing them. Alright, down here, turn on title action safe and move your V to the center of your screen, so something like that. And so now our V is pretty much perfectly centered, but we want to make sure that this is the right color. I'm going to turn off title action safe. I'm going to turn off this white background layer so that I see the V behind us. And I'm actually going to move this off to the side a little bit. And there you can see that it's a little too big, so I'm going to decrease the size a little bit. Something like that. It doesn't have to be perfect for now. And then I'm going to change the color using this eyedropper tool and just click on the gray of the other V. I'm going to move it back to about where it was. Turn on my white background. Okay, so now I have to split this V in two. I'm going to do that using this rectangle mask tool. So before I use the rectangle to create an actual background, but if you have a layer selected and you're using the rectangle tool, it's actually a mask. So see how I click and drag? I can create a mask around any of my objects. And so I'm going to create it and make it just about the size of half of my V. Alright, so now I have half of my V, and I want that to appear on that first audio beat. So let me play through this audio and then pause it when the beat hits. So somewhere right around there. Let me play. So that's pretty good. You know, I can finesse this later, but you get the picture. Alright, now on the second audio beat, I have to have the other side of the V basically pop up. So there's two ways I can do it. I can either duplicate this layer by doing this, looking at the mask, press M to bring up this mask option down here, and then invert it by clicking this checkbox down there for inverted. The only problem is now we have this little slight white line, and that happens when you have two objects that are the same that you mask and invert one of them. So I'm going to have to move this mask slightly over. So I'm going to click on the mask layer and then press right on my keyboard, or left rather, So then the masks slightly overlap by 1 pixel. So then if I drag this layer over, it will start on the second beat. So let me play it out. So there we have, the start of our bumper. I'm going to make this layer invisible. Another way to do it is to use keyframes and to keyframe this mask position. So mask path. So if I set a keyframe right here, and then I go over 1 frame, I did that by pressing Command and the right arrow key, and then changing this mask to here so that the whole thing shows. Let's see what it looks like. So it's basically the same idea. I just, there's actually a motion in this 1 frame. You can't see it because it's too fast. But if this keyframe was out here, you would see the motion of the mask growing. But since it's 1 frame, it just moves so quickly. And you could do this kind of thing with the mask expansion, even mask opacity. So we'll just use that way because then it, leaves our timeline a little bit cleaner with less layers. So here we have our object. So on this third beat, basically, it's supposed to invert the colors. So we need to add a new background. So I'm just going to actually rename this background 1 white. I'm going to name this V1 gray. Then I'm going to duplicate this background layer by pressing Command D and moving it on top of the V1 gray and moving it on the timeline so it just appears on this beat. And then I want to actually change the fill of this to this gray. So I'm going to take the eyedropper and click this gray. So now when I move this over, you'll see that this background is the same color as that gray V. I'm now going to duplicate this V1, rename these. So background 2 gray, V2 white. And I'm just going to move this so it lines up with this as well. This one I don't need the mask, so I'm just going to delete the mask. And then I'm going to change the color over here in the character palette to white. So let's play it through so far. And then on the next beat, we have it shrink. So let's shrink it up. So I'm going to press Command Shift D to split this layer. And then I'm just going to shrink this size, something like this, and make sure that's centered still. So move it down a little bit. Okay, so let me just decrease our FX work area. So then at this next beat, the Video School Online text kind of comes out of the V. So I'm going to duplicate this layer so that we have the same sized layer. I'm just going to type out Video School Online. Actually, I'm just going to do Idio School Online because I already have the V and it's going to end up being next to it. But I'm going to start it over on this side of the V. So something like right here, I'm going to line it up with the right side of the V. Then I'm going to create a mask. Actually, first I'm going to put it in the middle of the screen so I can see the whole thing. I'm going to create a mask around it. And then I'm going to move the whole layer over, line it up with the edge of the V. Then I'm going to select my mask and then move the mask over so that the mask is completely on the right side of the text. Then I'm going to set a couple keyframes for all of these layers. So press P with both selected and hit this timer right there, the stopwatch, to set a keyframe for position. Then I'm going to go ahead a few frames. I'm going to move this V over, and all these things I might tweak later depending on the size and everything. And then with this V, with the Video School Online, I'm going to first, actually, I'm going to bring up the mask path and set a keyframe at the start. So it's going to stay like that. Then I'm going to go to the end and move the keyframe or the mask all the way over so that you can see the whole Video School Online. And then I'm going to move the Video School Online text, or Idio School Online, over. And as you can see, it's not centered, so I'm just going to keep moving it until it's centered, and then move this V back a little bit. Something like this. This is more centered, something like that. Alright, so now let's play this out and see what we did. So we have the basic motion, but it doesn't look the same as this one. For one, the text isn't the right color. So let's change that up. So I'm not going to solo this, but I am going to make the rest of these invisible except for the Video School Online. I'm going to move this down just slightly just so I can see it for a second. So the school should be this other gray, so I'm just going to select those letters, just highlight them, and then select the colors of the original version. Okay, now I'm going to move this back up to the original placement. Not that it really matters. Then turn on all of these eyeballs. Alright, so that's not the only thing that didn't look right. Another thing was that in our original version we had motion blur turned on. So I'm going to turn on motion blur right here and then check motion blur for these two layers because these are the main ones that have motion, and it's going to create this sort of blurriness that looks a little bit more natural to the human eye for motion. So let's play it out. Let's see, lagging After Effects. Okay, so maybe it's a little too fast. So if I press U a couple times on a layer, it will bring up all the keyframes. So I select all the keyframes, move them a little bit. Maybe a little too slow, so make it a little bit faster. And then one thing I'm going to do while these are selected, I'm going to right click them, do keyframe assistant, and do easy ease. So that will kind of slow it down at the end so that it starts out fast but then slows down at the end. And actually I can do easy ease here as well. So it starts out slow, it's a little bit more natural. But maybe move these up a frame or so it matches up with the audio perfectly. Alright, so now let's watch our bumper. Let's render it out and see how it looks. Okay, I mean, I think that's pretty much as close as we will get right now to this original one. And then you can just add a quick fade to the end. One way to do that is to select all of our layers, press T to bring up opacity, and then go forward, set a keyframe, and go forward however much you want, and then set the opacity to 0. So that's one way to fade out. You can see this background image in the background there. But when you do that, you'll notice that you see the bottom V and everything. So actually what we want to do is get rid of these lower layers that we don't need anymore. So these two layers, I'm just going to press Command Shift D, not save, Command Shift D, and just delete. So then it fades out and you don't see the background. Another way you can add a fade is, so let's get rid of all these keyframes, is by adding a black layer. So I'm going to add a black solid and then do the reverse. So opacity, I'm going to set that keyframe at 100, but move it ahead, and then starting out, put it at 0, so it kind of, the black fades on, and that actually creates fade out for your video. Alright, so that's it for this lesson. I hope you learned a lot and enjoyed it. And you know, these lessons are a little bit longer than my typical lessons, but I'm going through with you the whole entire process of creating these bumpers. And so this was a simple one, but it still takes some time. But you can see, you know, that it's not too hard. It's basic stuff once you know After Effects, and it's just learning how to use those basic techniques the right way. Thank you so much for watching. If you have any questions, please let me know. Otherwise, I'll see you in the next lesson. Bye.